Greetings all! Welcome to round 2 of my Visage theory videos. First, let's jump to my final thoughts on the first 2 chapters. I'll try to keep them brief. My overall impression is very good. I think there's a great deal of promise here. The creativity of environment, foreboding atmosphere, and degree of puzzle solving is exactly what I expected and exactly what I want in a psychological horror game that draws inspiration from older games. That is, this which entails more emphasis on the use of shadows, sound, and chance encounters rather than endless chasing and repeated jump scares. So on these terms, I'm very pleased. The biggest problem this game faces are the technical aspects of gameplay. I give a lot of leeway to this since the game is still a work in progress, but I often found game-breaking bugs. As was obvious in my gameplay, I hated the candle system. It was terribly buggy and absolutely annoyed me to the point where I considered quitting the game numerous times. Second, the pills were useless. If the intention was to preserve or restore my sanity, they didn't work, and I completely abandoned their use near the end. The sanity meter itself was incredibly difficult to determine if it was working the way it should, as it would often go red for no reason. If this system is to be used in the final product, there is still a great deal of work to be done here. Now let's start the theory portion. I've decided to cut these theory videos into several short videos, as I'm very restricted time-wise. Many of the videos will overlap. As is tradition for many horror games with a first-person style, we can assume that the flashback in the game's intro is a glimpse into the direct circumstances that led to the current events of the player character, thus the murder-suicide that preceded the first 2 chapters. The events of this intro take place in a dark, dimly lit room with no discernible furniture save for the chairs that seat our 3 hostages, a single hanging light bulb, and a worn wooden table where a revolver rests. We see concrete floors and concrete walls and what appears to be some wooden beams. It is very possible we are in a basement or some similar subterranean structure, as there are no windows. For the scene unfolding, we are given a shaky, sometimes blurred view of the 3 struggling, bound, and gagged individuals that seem well aware of the fate that awaits them. They are fully conscious, screaming and thrashing about. The first to die is a woman of an undetermined age, whose face we can clearly see shrouded in horror. The second and third, whose features are hard to determine, appears to be a young boy and an even smaller girl. All are clad in modern clothes, marking these events as sometime relatively recent. As all 3 have similar hair color and texture, we assume they may be part of a single family unit. Regardless of their connections, each are shot and killed systematically before the gunman shoots himself in the mouth. Since we are shown the actions of the assailant in first person, we can't determine what the perpetrator looks like. However, we can gain some insight on his feelings during the events taking place. Though he is about to commit a heinous crime, we can tell from the frequent hesitation and shaky hand movement that he is reluctant to perform the murders taking place, indicating that our character is not malicious but feels driven to commit these acts, perhaps even possessed. He certainly appears to take no joy from what he has done, and with each sequential murder he struggles to take aim. The unsteadiness of his hand continues until the very end, when he finally pulls the trigger on himself and all grows dark. Scene, in a direct nod to Konami's PT, the player character awakens in a room different than that in the intro. However, we presume, since this has taken place immediately after the murder-suicide, shown again in first person, with the protagonist waking up from a position similar to that of one that has just killed himself, aka having fallen over, that this is the same character from the intro. Further support for this theory comes from the fact that devs have cited the Silent Hill series as a major source of inspiration for the game, and Silent Hill is a series where the protagonist has often committed a heinous crime and must face some form of supernatural retribution. If this theory is correct, that would place the player character in some dark state of purgatory, in which he will not be able to escape without paying some awful price or solving a mystery related to his own misdeeds. Since the player character does not speak, we have no idea what his inner thoughts are in either the intro nor the following chapters. If this is the same character, we do not know if he recalls the events prior to his resurrection, nor if he recognizes the house that he explores. However, the room we awaken in, tiled, empty, bare of furniture, and more brightly lit, is a very different room than the one the murder-suicide took place in, and seems to exist in its own reality, as in not part of the original construction of the house. It is important to note the large bloody mess on the floor directly where the player character was lying. This would be consistent with a self-inflicting gunshot wound to the mouth. Also note the scratching on the floor, which may point to the passage of time, or number of travelers through the door ahead. The number appears to read 23. To briefly discuss the house our character will enter, it is probably safe to assume that the supposed family unit seen in the intro are the owners of the house the character awakens in, as suggested by the personality of the bedrooms and the writings on calendars, walls, and pictures. There is a master bedroom connected to what appears to be a young girl's room, with a bedroom across the hall that appears to belong to a young boy. There are also height markings on a wall in the kitchen, indicating at least 2 small children have resided there. This would match what we saw of the group in the beginning. As many of the photographs shown throughout the house show a couple with a large portrait in the living room depicting a wedding day, it is safe to assume that the family unit that resides there consists of a traditional nuclear family, aka husband, wife, and kids. Since we did not see an adult male in the intro, we are assuming that it's the father that perpetuated the murder-suicide, and it's again possible that this is the character we are playing. It should also be noted that there does not appear to be a recent family portrait anywhere in the house, though there are photos of children, events, and various family characters throughout. Now let's look at the protagonist. When the player character awakens, he will exit this sterile room and enter one of the house's many hallways. The character will immediately venture to his right to what will become the progress hub of the game, the chapel. This room will stand out as an odd feature in a somewhat modern home, complete with an altar and confessional booth. The fact that the player will start here immediately as the main story begins is significant, as there are religious figures throughout the home and an obviously deep supernatural influence on the house. Please note that the progress trophies will be displayed in a set of 3, as 3 is a number of apparent significance throughout the game. Also, note that there were 3 murder victims in the intro, with 3 bullets used to kill each respectively. There are also 3 in the Holy Trinity: the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. As we leave the chapel, the hallway phone will ring and the player will answer but not respond. The voice on the other end of the line is Rose, the owner's very nosy and deranged neighbor. She addresses the player as Dwayne. We now know that Dwayne is the owner of the house, and very likely the murderer in the intro, and possibly our character. Since the phone is close to the large window facing a nearby house, if Rose is in the house directly across from this window, and if she is watching from a window in said house, it would confirm that the player character is indeed Dwayne, as she would be able to identify the character. However, we have yet to see Rose, so this could be a form of mistaken identity. What we learned from the phone call is that the owner of the home, Dwayne, has become a recluse, and current events are taking place late in the evening, 3:33 in the morning, according to the clocks. The protagonist also hasn't been seen outside the house in 3 weeks. Again, the number 3. Note that Rose doesn't mention the family in the intro, nor waits for Dwayne to respond to what she says. Exploring the rest of the house, we discover further clues about our whereabouts. Mail indicates the location of the house is in the state of Oregon, with the radio reporting on news in Riversdale, while furnishings indicate the year is sometime in the 1980s. The calendar further indicates that it is October. However, the radio erroneously reports that it will be a sunny day with a low of 77 degrees. It is instead dark and stormy outside. This is further indication that the home may exist in an alternate reality. As the home is large and well furnished, we can deduce that the family was decidedly middle class. However, there is a slight state of disrepair. The home has many scratches and cracks along its walls. The blinds are bent, plant life appears to be dying. The once beautiful wooden floors now show significant signs of wear, with dirt and general fading seen throughout. The kitchen, study, garage, and living room are seen in greater states of disarray, with trash, dirty dishes, and empty beer cans spread throughout. A large pile of newspapers exists by the door. This detail is particularly interesting, Evidence of the newspaper and takeout pizza indicates visitors to the home, even if not setting foot inside, meaning that someone is currently occupying the home and has been for some time, and there is no acknowledgement of a crime having just taken place. Also, as the general state of disarray clashes with the quality and organization of the furnishings in the house, furnishings that indicate a bit of initial care and pride had been placed on this dwelling. It leads me to determine that the family as a group has not been residing in the main portion of this house, perhaps for the 3 weeks in question. That is, if the family in the intro is the same family currently residing in this house. There are a few possibilities to consider. 1. Dwayne Anderson, the resident, has been keeping his family away from the house or out of the main portion and has been nesting inside, refusing to clean or maintain the home. Or 2. Someone may be inhabiting the house after the murders. However, this could not be Dwayne if Dwayne was the one holding the gun in the intro, as he would very likely not survive the head trauma. Again, we are assuming that the game is taking place after the events of the murder-suicide, but note, nowhere do we see what appears to be the scene of the crime or evidence of where it had taken place in the home, making it possible the murder-suicide didn't take place in the house itself, although it is possible that a cleanup and rearranging of the environment took place afterward. But then by whom? As it would not be by the perpetrator, as he is very likely dead. Also, noting the concrete floors and wall, it would be likely that the events took place in the large room of the basement or the garage, but both areas currently are completely cluttered with furniture. It is my deduction that whomever made the mess in the home is likely suffering from some form of depression, evident from the obvious massive amounts of alcohol consumption, an alarming number of pills found throughout the game, lack of sanitation, and obvious seclusion. So the question remains, is this our protagonist or Dwayne, or are they one and the same? There is also this possibility about the world we are seeing. As noted before, Silent Hill is a major influence on this game. As the player character in each game would explore the worlds would often be reflected in an alternative state, usually under the supernatural influence of the dark forces within the town, as well as the protagonist's own twisted psyche. It's possible that the disarray we find here is a mere illusion, influenced by our own protagonist's state of mind, which again must be one of unhappiness and depression, which would be further indicated by the faulty wiring throughout the home causing inadequate lighting in rooms, with bulbs constantly breaking and creaking groaning sounds heard throughout the chapters. Also note the many broken keys that lie in front of the large front door, a sign of no escape despite many attempts. The dirty tracks shown in the entryway can also be an indication of many journeys or many travelers into this realm. As with PT, the radio has an ominous message for the players by promising to have fun with a special male guest. The guest is identified as Dwayne Anderson. Knowing what we do of previous psychological horror games, it further makes it likely that the player character is the Dwayne, and that the radio is warning us that the malevolent supernatural forces that inhabit this realm will be out to torment our character. In other words, the fun to be had will be the events to unfold in the following chapters, and since they are happening to the player, we must be Dwayne. Note, it also mentions spending time with family on a special vacation day, and mentions Dwayne's family specifically at the end of the broadcast. A further clue that the guest, Dwayne, is the murderer and homeowner. So, let's recap. The player character is likely Dwayne Anderson, a man who murdered his whole family, seemingly against his will, before killing himself. Prior and certainly after these events, his mental or spiritual state is one suffering deep internal torment and is unable to escape his current reality. From what we've seen so far, and will become more apparent in the chapters, the house itself seems to exist in many dimensions. In chapters 1 and 2, there appears to be shifts in these realities, as multiverses collide and sometimes seem to meld together. The house is full of many entities, which we will explore in later videos. The overall feel, though, is that the house is existing in a form familiar to our player character, in a setting that Dwayne would know very well. Now, let's end this video on the significance of the number 3. Note the time is 3:33 a.m. Obviously, this is the number 3 in a set of 3. Western religion seems important to this story. In Christianity and Judaism, the number 3 has many important meanings. Here are a few. The Holy Trinity, God in 3 forms, which comprise of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. There's also the evil Trinity, Satan, the Antichrist, and the false prophet. The number 3 appears in the Bible 467 times, second only to the number 7. According to Corinthians, Jesus rose on the 3rd day. There were 3 victims killed by 3 bullets, thus 3 human sacrifices. The word for 3 in Hebrew means harmony, completeness, and a new life. The number 3 is also significant in other cultural faiths, particularly Norse mythology. For instance, Valknut, or Knot of the Slain, is a representation of the slain dead and is represented by 3 triangles interwoven. Note there are 3 pedestals on the altar. In most forms of common folklore, challenges come in 3s. There will likely be 3 chapters, aka 3 challenges. There are 3 pillars of time: past, present, and future. As we travel through dimensions, we are towing through the different realms of time and place. Also note, there are 3 life stages: birth, life, death. And for every journey, there is also a beginning, middle, and end. And now we've come to the end of the beginning. Please let me know what you think and would like to see me talk about in a future theory video. Until next time.